There are 38 Canadian law professors and constitutional criminal law experts who wrote to the Attorney General and the Minister of Agriculture regarding Bill 156. This is unprecedented, that 38 Canadian law professors from across this country who are watching Ontario right now and watching the language in this legislation, and they have said aspects of the bill would infringe individual rights to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly and therefore violate the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Section 2B of the Charter, Mr. Speaker, you'll know this, is aimed at promoting and safeguarding the open debate and discussion essential to a free and democratic society. The right to freedom of expression includes expression that gives the public, including consumers, access to information that would enable them to make informed food purchasing choices. If Bill 156 is passed as drafted, and this is according to the 38 law experts, legal experts in this country, if 156 is passed as it's drafted, as it's before us today, it would effectively cut off an important source of public information and a driver of policy change. It would silence journalists and those who advocate for policy protection by exposing the abuse of animals at agricultural facilities and violate their charter rights to freedom of expression. Now, these experts are they're urging the government, and so this is an important part of the democratic process, they are urging the government to amend this bill so that it doesn't infringe Ontarians' charter rights. And the question for the government, why pass this bill as drafted, only to be embroiled in a legal battle later? Like, ask yourself. I mean, the agriculture minister is shaking his head. Like, are you smarter than these 38 legal experts in the country? No, you're not. This is our opportunity. Like, we're trying to help you through this process. So, I mean, you will end up in court on these precedents. So I guess the other question, if the minister is fine with this, is that, why does the government feel comfortable taking away Ontarians' freedom of expression? Why does this government feel comfortable wasting government money fighting for a decision in court? Why not do your due diligence ahead of time? Why not find that balance where you're not infringing on the rights of Ontarians? And I want to give you an example of why it is so important to have whistleblower protection in Ontario and in Canada. In 2017, and some of my colleagues who were here with me for the last 7 or 8 years, Sarah Mote-Hedzeda from the Toronto Star, you remember the story, she went undercover to expose the mistreatment of temp workers at Fiera Foods. There had been a workplace liability loophole that the Liberals seemed very happy to just leave in there. They sort of did a surface change to the laws, ensuring that those companies that hire through temporary worker agencies are directly responsible for workplace deaths and on-the-job injuries. We basically shamed them into doing that. And this is back in 2016, 2017. There were new regulations under the WSIA titled Section 83, Section 83-4, ensuring that companies hiring temp workers through agencies are held financially responsible under the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board for injuries sustained at the hands of an employer. But despite the deaths of temp workers, and now I think we are at 5 deaths at Fiera Foods. And remember, Fiera Foods also got federal and provincial grant money. But despite the deaths, the Liberals have still left that section unenacted. But we would not know what's happening in that factory had this journalist not gone undercover, not had found out that there were poor safety protocols, very little training, long and harsh conditions of work that workers were under. And you followed suit as a government. You have not also made sure that temporary workers are safe. So this is the important and historical context for whistleblower protection. Whistleblower protection has played an important role in shaping policy in this province, in impacting laws, and ensuring that the rights of certain workers have been protected. This example with Fiera Foods is a perfect example of how finding out what the working conditions are happening on certain factories can impact the law. And I would love it if you would actually follow through on what the Liberals said they were going to do and ensure that temp agencies are held legally liable for the deaths and injuries of workers on those sites. Public awareness came in this instance about due to the work of this particular journalist, and people deserve to know how their food is made, how the people are treated who make their food. I mean, I think that we can agree on that. When our critic, the member from Timiskaming Cochrane, did his 1 hour lead, he said, you know, and I'm quoting from Hansard, there are parts in this bill that could be described as, what have you got to hide? And he goes on to say, I don't think agriculture has anything to hide. And in some of the wording in this bill, it kind of says that. And I don't think anyone wants that. He goes on to say also, I understand that the bill is trying to limit the impact of people who are totally opposed to animal agriculture. And that is true. There are people who are totally opposed to farming animals. There are. But this also limits investigative reporting, he goes on to say. Our system isn't perfect, and no system is perfect. There have been cases of investigative reporters going into a food processing facility, and things were revealed because of that investigative reporter who went into that facility under false pretenses. Under this act, that investigative reporter would be charged or could be. And why I don't like this is because in our system, we do a really good job. Now, he's a farmer. He knows the farming industry. He knows the sector. He knows the people. And yet, he goes on to say, why are we taking the risk for this to be challenged or for our system dragged through the mud for something that we don't need to do? So there you have. You have, you know, the legal opinions from the sharpest minds in the country who have looked at this legislation. Yeah, they're sharper. They're sharper than some of the people on the government side. It is true. And they've said, why draft this legislation? Why let it go forward unamended? Like, work with us to make it a stronger piece of legislation so that you don't end up in court as you are with the midwives and the teachers and the students. This particular opinion that was actually sent to the Attorney General, Mr. Downey, and as well, the Minister of Agriculture has it in his hands as well. It's dated February 6th, and it has to do, so these are Canadian law professors and constitutional and criminal law experts who have collectively shared their legal opinion. You don't have to hire any more lawyers. Yeah, you've kept most of the lawyers busy in this province, I have to say, and you might have a hard time finding a lawyer. But they go on to say in this, and I don't have to send it over to you because it's on your desk. Bill 156 increases fines for trespassing on agricultural property. In an effort to muzzle employee whistleblowers, it also makes it an offense to gain access to a farm under false pretenses. Owners of farm property are given significant powers to arrest individuals on their property. The bill also restricts individuals' ability to peacefully gather on public property near trucks transporting animals. Now, this is also important. So this is the context. Until November 2019, there were no ag gag laws in Canada. Alarmingly, Alberta recently passed such a law after hurrying it through the legislative process in just 10 days. And now Ontario is proposing the same. These legal experts go on to say it is in the public interest for employees to expose unlawful and unethical activity, even when doing so requires not revealing their full intentions to their employers. Therefore, dishonest and even offensive speech in these circumstances is protected by the American First Amendment. So all of those laws that were started, ag laws that had their birth, if you will, in the United States, almost collectively, all the ones that I've cited have failed and were deemed unconstitutional. As with many U.S. gag laws, Section 4-6 of Bill 156 appears to target investigative journalists and protected speech and has no connection to the stated goal of protecting property and biosecurity. This is what our critic was trying to get to when he was questioning the former member. What does targeting investigative journalists have to do with biosecurity? It would insulate private actors from being held publicly accountable, would unreasonably curtail rights to protest on public property. And in an open democratic society, streets and other public places are an important place for public discussion and political expression. Protecting rights to protest on public property is critically important to safeguard freedom of expression and its corollary, the right to listen. And so I put this to the members of this House, Mr. Speaker, that constitutional experts have looked at Bill 156. They have questioned aspects of it, and it should be amended. And I look forward to the debate from my colleagues. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.